At the weekend, massive game, because Arsenal went to the northeast and took on Newcastle United. There was one goal in this game, and it was scored by Anthony Gordon, so it went Newcastle's way. But what happened thereafter was quite unexpected in a whole variety of different ways. The controversy centred on Gordon's match-winning goal for Newcastle. VAR carried out a 4-minute check on 3 separate incidents in the build-up to the goal. 1, to see if the ball had gone out of play. 2, to see if there'd been a foul. 3, to see for any potential offside. The goal was given, and then it all kicked off post-match with Arteta.
Yeah, we have to talk about the result, because you have to talk about how the hell this goal stand up, and it's incredible. I feel embarrassed, but I have to be the one now coming here to try to defend the club and please ask for help, because it's an absolute disgrace that this goal is allowed. It's an absolute disgrace, because it's not a goal. For many reasons, it's not a goal. For more than one reason at least, it's not a goal. And it's too much at stake here. We put so much effort. It's so difficult to compete at this level. And it's an absolute disgrace. Again, I feel embarrassed. I've been more than 20 years in this country, and this is nowhere near the level to describe this as the best league in the world. I am sorry. You just need to see one image, c'est fini. And you have any doubt, you look at the second one, and if this is a goal, okay, that's fine.
They're saying they haven't got camera angles to prove one way or the other.
I don't care, honestly. I don't care what they say. It's the outcome. It's too late. Whatever they say is too late.
Yeah, you lost the game. You're left with nothing. Arsenal didn't win it. Arsenal didn't get a goal. Arsenal had no chance of drawing it. They left with nothing. So Arteta's saying, Martin O'Neill, it's an absolute disgrace. Thereafter, there was a statement from Arsenal. We'll get to that in a second. Should a manager be talking about that post-match, Martin, in that fashion? It was an absolute disgrace.
I'm totally with him. I'm absolutely with him. He's being interviewed just immediately after the game. He has seen the incident back. It's taken 4.5 minutes to finally make a decision on that. Forget about the length of time it has taken. You want to hear, there's 3 possibilities of that not being a goal, and any one of them you could argue wouldn't be the middle one, the one where.
To see if there'd been a foul.
He's definitely got his arms on him. There's no question about it. Absolutely no question, and therefore it shouldn't have gone any further. There's a potential offside as well too, and actually the ball looks over the line. I know we can't confirm that there because they don't have the wherewithal to do it.
So you absolutely agree with Arteta and his approach?
I am with him in this approach.
Do you think he'd have been like that if Arsenal won the game 2-1?
Oh, well, that would be a minute. We're talking about the tenure and the tone of his, the tone of his argument might be different. If you've won the game, of course you'll be less angry, you'll be less belligerent, and but you still might want to make the point. But overall, he's been interviewed a couple of minutes afterwards. He's gone, I've been in these situations before where you have looked at this here. That should never have been a goal. Should never have been a goal, and therefore in this particular instance I'm totally with him.
You think he'll still feel exactly the same this Monday morning, in spite of the fact he was at boiling point post-match and that's when he came out with that? You think his emotion post-match will be exactly the same this Monday morning?
Absolutely.
Do you think Arsenal were right, Martin, following it up with a statement in which they said PGMOL urgently needs to address the standard of officiating and focus on action which moves us all on from retrospective analysis, attempted explanations and apologies? Instead of moaning statements like that, why is the club not offering a solution?
Well, okay. You've asked me why I think they put it out, and it's only, and this is my thoughts on it, is that the manager's been left out there at this minute. He's made the comments, and he's been very, very angry. Arsenal Football Club felt that they're going to back him up, and I think that's the point. And for what they've said about in terms of the whole picture, I'm not wildly sure about that. But what I'm saying is that that on this particular instance, the football club have backed him. And I suppose he probably wanted that after his outburst.
Samuel, what's your take on it? The Arsenal statement and what Arteta said post-match?
Look, I mean, you've got him directly after the game, and whilst that's the price on the ticket, there's always perhaps perhaps a general sentiment that maybe he should have stood back and got himself together and used a better way of expressing his views on it, because you've got the full unbridled emotion. And some of the observations he made during it, like the basis for the observation in worldwide football. So what, you're managing in the Spanish league, are you? You're managing in the Italian league. You're managing in the German league. You're watching that and scrutinising every aspect of those leagues to be able to make that observation that the standard of British refereeing and our decision-making process is not fit for purpose and falls below the standard of other leagues. You can't make that observation because you're not in that position to do so. Do I think it's an emotive and slightly unnecessary outburst? Probably. Is it stock in trade for him? Yeah, he's built a football club and a culture at Arsenal which is based upon high intensity, high emotion. This is what's got this football club bouncing right now. So I expect it from Arteta. Do I admire it? No. Does he understand the protocols of the game that he's talking about? Clearly not, because VAR's the on-field decision was goal. Right? VAR's objective after that is to look into the reality of a clear and obvious error. And if they haven't got the camera angles, and if they haven't got the ability to make certain, each part of that conversation has a subjective view to it. If you can't categorically, as VAR, say that ball was out, you can't make that decision. You're staying with the on-field. If you've got a centre-back, and Martin will know damn sight more about this than I do, but I've spoken to players over the weekend, I've spoken to other people around the game, and there's a school of thought, including Gary Neville's observation at the time, that Saliba was going towards the ball and was already ducking before Linton put his hands on the back of him. And the third part of the equation, so that's a subjective observation as well, and again it's going against the on-field decision, and the on-field decision was goal. So the third part of it is the offside scenario, and again there's a debate around that. So all of those are about the protocols of the game. Now, where I think that Arteta has a point, and where we have to look at the reality of VAR, and where I'm beginning to morph on my idea that people have got to get on with it, is they're not going to get on with it. Right? They're not going to get on with it, because whatever you haven't got in football is the reasons why something isn't happening for you. So this argument now has to be moved on. If we're going to have digital technology in sport, then we have to go the whole hog, which means they have to have sensors on the bylines, they have to have sensors on the touchlines, they're going to have sensors in the ball. You're going to have to bring artificial intelligence into this equation, because otherwise what you're doing is you're opening the door to this ridiculous characterisation that VAR was brought in to be 100% accurate.
And it was never going to be.
Now, for Arteta, I look at it and do I think to myself, if I was Arsenal, would I double down on him? Given the fact they've given him licence to operate, he operates at a very high level of emotion. Look at the games that he manages. Look at the way I went to the Arsenal game last year against Man City at the Emirates. Sorry, not at the Emirates. And the level of intensity has been created by him. So I then look at that and say, well, I'm not surprised about that outburst. Do I think there should be a consequence for that language? Do I think he should be put in his place? Oh, I most certainly do, because I think his overreach.
And what does that look like?
Well, I think ultimately there needs to be some sort of retribution for the observations that he's making about the disgraceful nature of the game, the conduct of the officials, the ineffectivity of PGMOL. Behind all this, and I maintain it, and it's not some sinister conspiracy theory, is because officialdom is trying to stamp some authority over the game, because they're starting to consequence players, like Gary O'Neill's whining about the penalty that was given away. If players stopped diving, then you wouldn't have referees being put to decisions like they're being put to. The bottom line is the officials are starting to go, right, we're putting extra time into place because players waste time, we're getting more control over the game, and there's an underlying simmering resentment.
So what would you do with Arteta? What's the punishment that fits the crime there?
Well, I think the punishment that fits the crime is for the FA to mete out.
What would you give him, a ban, a fine, what? Both?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the menu of opportunities are for you to do so.
Do you accept Arteta should be punished?
First of all, just because Gary Neville suggested that it was that he was the Arsenal defender was falling. I know that that's true. It doesn't mean it. It's pretty clear to me that was a foul. So don't go to the first one, don't go to the third one, go to the middle one. It's a foul. It's a foul on the Arsenal defender by Joe Linton.
But it wasn't clear to the officials.
Well, not clear to the officials. It's clear to everybody. It's clear. And it's clear. Now here's my point. Well, obviously, here's my point. Here's my point. Why would Arsenal double down? And Arsenal have to go and support him. And I think that he. Listen, this has happened before. I've had it. Sorry?
As an owner, I would have as well, because I recognise the fact that what I've got is a person that's highly charged. This is how he operates, right? So if I go and neuter him as an owner, I'm effectively taking away some of the things that have been absolutely invaluable to my football club. I'd have a private word with him and go, listen, that was just a tad too much. But in public, I'm going to support him because the very intensity...
Would you? So you'd be two-faced about it?
No, I'd be constructive and balanced. Because I tell you what, I wouldn't...
So you publicly support him in a statement?
What my job is not to create division for the media to profit from. My job is to manage my manager. And if I believe that the intensity and energy that he's brought to this football club and then backing him on decisions like Aubameyang were the right way to go, I'm going to say to you, I probably wouldn't have made the statement the way Arsenal have made it, but if I was asked about it as the Arsenal chairman, I would have said, I back my manager.
I'm being called a joke, Simon. My pride is dented. Is there a name in it? No. Jim, you're a joke, Jim White. You, the media, that must be me, deliberately interview managers after games to get the exact reaction that you want. You pretend to be shocked, but you're not, because the managers are all fired up. Yeah, well, that's when we interview them after games. And they say what they want to say and don't say what they don't want to say. The big boys, believe me, the big boys. We're talking about Arteta's outburst after that goal by Anthony Gordon was allowed at the weekend, which allowed Newcastle to take all 3 points because Arsenal didn't score. So they didn't draw the match, they lost the match and left with nothing. Arteta had a rant, and now we're talking about that rant because Arsenal have backed it up. Arsenal, in the meantime, Martin, say PGMOL urgently needs to address the standard of officiating and fans on action, which moves us on from retrospective analysis, attempted explanations and apologies. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Which moves us on from retrospective analysis, attempted explanations and apologies.
What it means is get it right first time round. Yeah. That's what it means.
Yeah,
there's no good apologising. What you've done is you've admitted that ultimately you've put a more transparent PGMOL. You're communicating better, but we don't care about your communication. We don't care about your apologies. We only care about you getting it right. And I think that's a badly worded statement from Arsenal. It's one thing supporting the manager on the fact that he's been emotive and invested in the game and strong. Where both I think myself and Martin agree is that he's taken it beyond the individual instance and broadened it out.
Is this a new norm now, Martin? Though we're going to get a manager having an outburst and a club statement backing him up.
Well, I don't know whether it's going to be the new norm. If the club are not in agreement with what the manager said, I think it's very, very difficult to go and back him up with, But they obviously are. And getting back to our point, I think as Simon and I were saying, the rant itself, I understand completely about the rant. I've done it myself, loads of it, and I have to say this, I think he had a major point in it. I think that the goal should have been disallowed for the middle one of the three. I think it was a foul. And no one will convince me
If you were
otherwise.
managing Newcastle, you'd be happy with all 3 points, I take it.
Of course.
You'd leave St James's Park happy.
Of course. You're looking at it from a different perspective. You're looking at it from a winning and a losing position.
It's
of
incredible.
Course you're delighted.
The hats you guys wear, though, isn't that amazing?
But I mean, this is it. The game is based around winning.
Because
How many times have I
also
come into this office and said exactly this?
But it's also inconsistency as well, because there's a double standard, because you and I both know that if Arsenal had won that game, he would have made an observation about the goal being allowed. If you'd have won 2-1 Arsenal, he would have never gone after the PGMOL and never gone after the standard of officiating the way that he did. The reason why he's gone after them to that level is because they've lost.
Oh, of course.
But then you should be going.
Of course, no.
Then you should be going after if you believe that to be the case, right? If you believe what you've just said,
you've lost a game where sorry, Sam, just 2 seconds. You've lost a game. You've lost a match now. Whether you deserve to win it or not is immaterial. But you've lost a game where you didn't. Doesn't matter. Where the goal should have been disallowed. It's as simple as that.
In your view.
In your view.
In the
official's view.
Yeah. Well, okay, right.
Not in Eddie Howe's view.
In my view,
maybe
well, I'm
not
not
in
so
our
sure.
View.
I'm right. Okay, right. Okay. Do you want me to leave now? Right. So, no. What I'm saying to you is this: here, the goal should have been disallowed. It's to me, it's an obvious foul. It's an obvious foul for a start.
But there's lots of other people that think it wasn't, Martin. So it's a very subjective decision, and that's the end of the discussion. You think absolutely. Other football minds think not.
Let's get back to the rant then.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's come in a couple of minutes afterwards.
Yours and Arteta's.
I'm talking about Arteta. Arteta's come in and he has vocalised his viewpoint on the goal. Where I think he should probably have stayed with that there. Instead, as Simon's made the point about going all around Europe and saying that the refereeing standards is much, much better. I think if he'd stayed with that point, because the next question, if I'm an interviewer, I might ask him then, next question, what happened about Havertz, who might have been sent off the field? I might have done that if it had been a decent interview or something, or I'd thought about that point. But it doesn't really matter.
Should have been sent off just in the passing?
I think he's extremely lucky to stay in the field. Extremely lucky to stay in the field. So you're saying he should have been
sent off?
Well, he's extremely lucky to stay in the field, which is probably the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
As by the way, should give me errors as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. You made a point earlier, Simon, about if the people would stop diving, and I'm absolutely with you. I'm with you in many aspects about players holding on to the faces when they haven't even been touched now. Absolutely, and it's getting to a desperate state. But I have to say, I do feel for the Wolves manager who, to me, it was never
in that instance. So do I in that isolated instance.
Yes.
But then what I do is I track it back. I join the dots going backwards and go, how have we got to a position where these decisions are being made that ultimately kid a referee? And you'll say we need more. Perhaps you'll say we need more education to the refereeing. We need more experience. We maybe need players in the dugout. In Stockley Park. But the bottom line is if we wind it all the way back and say, if we had stopped this culture of simulation, there wouldn't be this 10 minutes being laid onto every single game or time wasting. If we'd stopped the culture of simulation, we wouldn't be having referees having to read the mind of players, because ultimately they are in a situation where there is such an element of subjectivity about did he touch him or didn't he touch? Was there enough force in that touch to be able to make that player go over? And the problem is that the fabric of the game has been eroded by it. And then you've got Arteta pushing the envelope, right? Because it's not just a case of going after the decision. He's gone after the whole kit and caboodle because people think they can. They think they can say what they want, when they want, how they want, and get away with it. And what's happening now is the officials are trying to correct the game. And now there's a balance of power going on in the battle about who runs the games. Because you've seen the observation being made by other managers about referees and what they think they're entitled to. Pep Guardiola saying they need to be more humble. It's all going on under the surface, alongside some decisions that do need to be questioned, like decisions about football managers' decision-making process need to be questioned and are questioned. The problem is that you are always going to end up in an area of subjectivity. And I don't think, even despite your far greater knowledge than me, that the science is settled, for want of use of an expression that you use regularly around the world, on whether that goal is universally accepted as being disallowed or allowed. And interestingly, Carragher made a really interesting point, because one of the observations about VAR was it was a goal disallowing system. And people were saying it's one of the things it does is disallow so many goals. All of a sudden, that's being turned on its head now.
You see, man, I would have thought you'd fall into the line of thinking with Gary Neville. He says, when I look back now, when he was playing, I don't think as players we always covered ourselves in glory with referees. And also at a big club, we all feel entitled, and you have to leave and retire to be able to see that. That's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? When you look back on it, you think, I've done that. I had an outburst after the game.
Of course.
Well, I've done that. I piled right in.
Manchester United players used to run after the referee when he gave a decision against them all the time. You know, they were there en bloc, en masse. So I'm getting back to the point. You asked me a question a way back about 20 odd minutes ago. Was I in agreement with the rant of Arteta? Right. Given those moments after the game, given what I saw, and given what I assume that he saw himself, I thought he was right to do so, or I sympathise with him, I empathise with him in that particular instance. Okay. He took it into a more general point, which I didn't agree with, but that's getting back to
Should he be punished? As a former manager, should this current manager be punished?
I personally speaking, if I'm sorry, if you're the FA, why? What's he going to be punished for? Because he's made his what shall I say? He has talked about the situation as far as he was concerned. Now, what are they going to say? Do you think
there's a line, Martin? Pardon? Do you think there's a line? Because I'm all for freedom of speech, right? But there comes a situation where ultimately there's an authority, like a manager's an authority, right? You don't run a democracy with your players. You run an autocracy. Yeah. You don't involve them in team selection, right? So the referees have made a decision. Do you not think? And again, I don't think that the referee should be excused from any blame, right? But do you not think that there is a line that a manager can go up to?
I do agree.
And he's gone over that line, hasn't he?
I do. No, I agree with this here. But no, so how has he crossed it, Simon? Tell me how he's crossed it.
Because he's taken it beyond an individual observation and he's broadened it out to the whole entire state of English refereeing and the PGMOL's inefficiency, the disgrace that is our league, the lack of standards, the lack of consistency, the comparison to other leagues around the world. He's basically dumped on a great height on the fact that everything about British refereeing right now is of a substandard. Yeah. And that's a bit too broad.
That is true.
He feels sick.
He shouldn't have done that. We're talking about widening the whole...
So he's crossed the line with the language he used.
He has, hasn't he? In isolation,
well, has he?
In isolation.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace. It's embarrassing. I feel sick. This is what he's saying.
But they're superlatives.
Yeah, but that's superlatives.
He's entitled to feel that way.
Absolutely. He is again. He's going to, and I'm quite sure if I was managing Arsenal and that had happened there, I would have said exactly the same thing.
Would you not be surprised, Martin, that he's punished?
Would he not? Well, again, I'm getting back to the point. Simon has mentioned the crossing the line, and you finally got me probably to admit that he's maybe overstepped the mark. What sort of punishment are you're going to say? Because let me put it this way, and it's just a side issue. We put a man in the moon in 1969, and we can't draw some straight lines now at this minute. So I don't know where we're going. VAR's got to.
Yes.
It's got to be questioned itself.
Yes, he should be consequenced. Given the nature of he's probably not going to be banned, he's going to be a financial consequence. And given Arsenal's doubling down on support, they're going to pay it for him anyway. So it's not going to be much of a consequence. But you cannot have a manager, with all due respect, all emotion priced into the equation. Everyone knows the price on the ticket. They all know what's coming. They know their rage and their infuriation and all that kind of stuff. You cannot go where he's gone. You can turn around and say that you're very disappointed and that ultimately there's an element of you that probably thinks they should keep their own counsel, right? And you make your official complaint and you do what you've done. That's playing to a gallery. That's going over the line. And it's not because I have any particular bias towards Arteta, because I think that the energy that he brings to that football club is the reasons why they're moving through the gears now. Yeah. So you can't neuter him.
But he's abused that energy.
But I think he's
crossed the line.
Yeah.
And having said all that, if he was your manager, you'd quietly back him.
I wouldn't go out with a statement Arsenal have gone out with. If I was asked, if someone knocked on my door and said, you as the Arsenal chairman, owner, what do you think to that? I'm with my manager on this. I think it was a very poor decision, and I think that ultimately I support the bulk of what he said. I don't think I'd have gone doubling down as a football club going, we're not interested in retrospective analysis.
You wouldn't have included a line in your statement.
We're not interested in apologies. They've gone over the line as well.
Yeah, you wouldn't include the line in your statement, Martin. Arsenal Football Club wholeheartedly supports Mikel Arteta's post-match comments after yet more unacceptable refereeing and VAR errors. We also like to acknowledge the huge effort and performance from our players and travelling fans at St James's Park.
It's essentially
what the fans got to do with it.
What? I know.
Because they're a club.
Yeah.
Everyone's together. That's what Arteta's done.
That's right.
They've galvanised. They're all together.
Exactly.
So we've got Arteta, another manager, coming out and hitting out big time at VAR. Hitting out in the sense of it's embarrassing. It's a disgrace. I feel sick. And then the football club backs him up. Where are we at with all of this? Any sensible thoughts on that? 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.